I'm on the same
Hello, I'm
page with
Eagle,
you.
Eagle Gardens.
What happened?
Hi, Indra. We are live, episode 472. I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button there and accidentally canceled things on my end, but we are here and live. Hopefully, you guys have had a great day. Mr. Indra's in the house to tell us his story. How you doing, Indra? Now that I've got everything worked out on my end.
Well, I'm still alive. The tree didn't kill me. It tried to. But for those who don't know, which is probably every single person listening, a 90-foot tall black oak tree fell on the corner of my house. And I was on the couch on the front porch snoozing. And when it hit the couch pretty hard, and that flung me 15 feet out into the room. And of course, it shut off the electricity and internet and everything. So it was black as the ace of spades because it was near 3 o'clock in the morning. And I woke up thinking, did I go to sleep on the floor? I haven't done that since I was 25. But then I crawled in the house, found a flashlight, and I went back out on the porch and noticed that the one end of the porch was demolished. And I went outside with the flashlight, and there, laying in my meadow down from my house and my fruit tree orchard, a 90-foot tall black oak with about 10 or 12 big branches. My neighbor said it looks like about 20 cords of black oak firewood. But I'm not going to get out there and saw it up. Can't. Too crippled up these days. So it's just laying there in the yard. It took out the tops of all my apple trees, took out my cherry tree down to a stump, took out part of it took out pretty much a lot of the fruit trees because it was a big, big tree. And when it fell, it took everything with it. Tore the internet off the house, tore electricity loose, shifted the house on its foundation, put splinters everywhere. Took me a little while to notice it, but I had an 8-inch splinter in my leg, in my calf on one side, and a 6-inch one on the other side that was in 4 inches. The 8-inch one was actually in 8 inches. It just had an inch sticking out. Like, if I just, wait a minute, this fucking thing is bigger than it looks. So I was bled like a stuck pig. My my shoe was full of blood. And, all in all, it was a big owie, and everything in my house was offline for 3 weeks. No internet, no anything. And I couldn't really call anybody because the phone, nothing was working. My nearest neighbor is like quarter mile down the hill from me, and they were on vacation at the coast. So I was just one of those, the cosmos going, let's see you get out of this, motherfucker, kind of deals. It's that's what happened. I was struggling with that. I was talking about coming on before that happened, but then that happened, and it changed the face of everything. That tree was a major shade giver for my house, so now it's open, south facing, open area, so that I can grow some pot on the patio next year. And that was good, because the patio before was all shaded, and I didn't really want to try growing on it because I didn't think it had enough light for meaningful grow. So this summer I will, if I survive. There's no more trees falling on houses, no driving off cliffs, no getting robbed and killed by, I live out by the Indian reservations and have run into some very strange folks who, I guess, they were kind of racist. As a white boy in Indian territory, but they've slacked off on that now. And I do some volunteer stuff for the local tribes, and I also my Forerunner has military grade infrared cameras on it. They use the same ones are used on the police helicopters. Can't remember the name of it offhand now, but they're fairly expensive. But you can see around the entire vehicle when it's completely black to give you the temperatures. And so I signed up with them as a search vehicle because it's a very capable off-road vehicle, Forerunner, with all the bells and whistles, and probably some extra bells and whistles. And so been getting along with those guys, and got my cactus garden going good. I'm growing a bunch of peyote plants, and I just harvested a bunch of mushrooms. The mushroom scene is going good. Just inoculated a bunch of philosopher's stones into jars. So 3 months from now, it'll start producing those sclerotas. I'll dig those out. I truly like the philosopher's stone high. It's a different kind of high than any of the mushroom trips. I don't know if you've ever had them, but it's a completely different thing. You just get this cat that ate the canary grin on your face, which doesn't go away for some hours. So anyway, I didn't have anything on the agenda to talk about. If anybody's got questions, I'll try to answer any questions that I can. I'm usually always thinking about when I was in India, and I took a walk from Gangotri, which is the mouth of the Ganga. That's where the Ganga River comes out of the ground in the Himalayas, comes out from a glacier, actually. And then there's 2 more temples. There's 3 sacred rivers. It's Kedarnath and Badranath and Gangotri. I went up to Gangotri and met these sadhus who offered me to go to the other 2 temples with them. And at the time, I had no idea about what they had in mind for how to get there or how far it was. And it was a 3-month walk to the second temple. And that was a complete surprise. We were walking for like 3 or 4 days, and I asked the guy, hey, how much longer? This is about 2.5 or 3 months. We were already off in 10.5 or 11,000 feet walking, and we didn't have much of anything with us, but these sadhus just had a bowl and a bag and some shoes. When you would get to different villages, they would meditate tried to help the village people, and then the village would feed you, and then you'd move on from there. They give you a big giant bowl of rice with a couple teaspoons of the hottest sauce I've ever had in my life on top of it. After walking all day long, that was a feast, let me tell you. You know, maybe they would give us some bananas and papayas, and mangoes on the side, because up at 11,000 feet in the Himalayas, the mangoes and banana trees are still plentiful all over that place. So it's still jungle at that height because it's on the equator. So since it's there on the equator, everything's pretty, still happening as far as plants go. And boy, what a walk. I mean, we walked for about maybe a month and a half or so. And we would stop at night and camp. And right away, in the beginning, the guy told me, this is going to be a silent walk and really no talking unless it's absolutely necessary. So basically, 6.5 months without saying a word to each other, which was very interesting because you could just look at each other and know what needed to be done for the night, like who was going to start the fire, who was going to do, it was all kind of automatic. Everybody was just smiley faced and took care of it. And these guys were all older guys because they were on, when you get to be like 50, 60 years old in India and you're a businessman, you give everything up and you get an orange robe and sandals. And you go on a spiritual journey. And you might die on the journey, but that's okay because that's what we were kind of doing anyway. That's the reason you went on the spiritual journey. So it wasn't a kind of a it was an inward journey. You're supposed to go inward and meditate. We meditated a lot. A lot of crazy stuff happened to us. I mean, we went to sleep one night after building a fire, and it was particularly cold. And all we had were these big pieces of material that the villagers supplied us with, which weren't very warm. So we would all sleep pretty close together to try to stay warm during the night. And we had a pretty good fire going that night. So everybody left a little space in between so we weren't rubbing up against your neighbor. And in the middle of the night, I felt somebody rubbing on my side. And I thought, well, I guess they must have got cold. So then about 5:30 in the morning, I had to get up and go take a whiz. And I looked out from underneath my thing. There was about a 15-foot long rock python had crawled in between us and curled up close to the fire and touching me on one side and head up and looked at me like, what's wrong? And what was wrong was my ass got up out of that head really quickly and stood away from it. And I woke up the other guys, and pretty soon the python was looking at us like, what's wrong, guys? I mean, everybody is warm and comfy, and it crawled away, allowed us to go back to sleep. But it was quite a thing to experience that kind of stuff in India. It was always, I don't know what you want to call it. It was always an adventure. I mean, every day was an adventure. A week after that, we were going along the edge of a cliff, and we were headed to another location. And it had about a 3-foot wide place, and then it dropped down below to a very long gravelly fall into the river if you would have fallen, which steadfastly trying to avoid doing. We came around the corner and there was a huge rock there. There was a female tiger sitting on the rock. And she was just looking at us, licking her paw. And I thought, geez, that means I have to be able to outrun these guys, because I couldn't understand. I mean, at the moment, it was like, what the fuck is going on? Here's a tiger, and we're out in the middle of nowhere. Is this the end story or what? Then a little bell was tinkling, and I looked down to see what it was, along with the other guys and the tiger. And there was about 6 or 7 Himalayan goats on a path down below the rock, and the lead goat had a bell on. And she jumped off the rock and grabbed him and took off with it. So we were able to resume our walk. But I'm pretty sure everybody had a little pee and poop in their underwear from that one, because it was a completely wild tiger, and there was like zero remedy. If she would decide that we were lunch, somebody was going to be lunch. But she decided goat was a better thing, and went down and took care of the goat. Thank goodness for Himalayan goats. Are you talking?
No, I'm sorry. My mic was muted. I'm having internet problems over here. Sorry about that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had internet problems too, but it was from a 90-foot tall black oak. Rubbed my communication setup severely. The guy just actually fixed it yesterday. So I've been sitting here for 3 weeks incommunicado. If I wanted to talk to somebody, I could live 20 miles into town where there was signal and get on the phone, which was kind of a huge pain in the ass on one level. On the other level, I didn't have any phone calls for 3 weeks. It was kind of peaceful and nice. And life took a very intensely peaceful turn. My bear came around, and he came very close to me 3 or 4 different times. He was kept trying to get close enough to lick my hand, because he's done that a couple of times. He snuck up on me, stuck his nose in my palm. I was watering the plants, and my hand was wet, and I had just switched hands on the hose. He stuck his nose in my palm, was licking water off my palm. And I gave him a drink of water, and then I beat feet inside, because I wasn't sure how tame Yogi was, but apparently he wasn't violent or anything. So he's here all the time. He's a nice little bear. His mother brought him here 3 years ago when he was just a little baby. And she came and was always hunting through the garbage. And so he got that habit too. And when he was really tiny, he came up to me a couple, maybe 6 or 8 times, let me scratch his head. So I think we're kind of familiar with each other, but I'm not taking anything for granted. Bears are still bears, and they still get hungry. You know, if you're eating a piece of fried chicken and then you bump into one, maybe take a bite out of your hand. But anyway, I try to avoid trouble with the local wildlife. We got a cougar too. I spotted her about a month and a half ago. The driveway doorbell started going ding, 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 ding. I went out to see what it was, and I didn't see anybody in the driveway, and the gates closed anyway. So I went back inside, and the gate doorbell went off again. So I got my binoculars and went out back and looked, and there was this beautiful, beautiful cougar sitting halfway down my driveway, looking down at something. I couldn't tell what, because I had to walk to a different place so that I could see. And what she had cornered was a big, giant diamondback rattler. And she was swatted with her paw, and it would rattle and make all kinds of noise like it was going to do something. Then she would swat it again. And she was just, a foot and a half from it. She had zero fear. She was just wondering when she was going to have a snake sausage for lunch. Pretty soon there was a struggle. A little bit of dust got raised. Then she stood up and had the snake's head in her mouth and walked off up the mountainside with it. And this snake was big. He was dragging 3 feet behind this cougar. And the cougar was, full-grown female, probably 130, 140 pounds. And she was magnificently muscled. She took care of the rattler. I didn't really want to know that I had a rattler here. But anyway, she took care of that. And I feel that was a blessing. Seems like she's a guardian for my property, because nobody really comes up here because it's at the end of the road. There's no reason to come. It's hard to turn around. And I got a sign on the gate that says, if you don't have a written invitation, turn around now. So I don't entertain a lot, or ever, for that matter. When I'm entertaining myself, I might take a mushroom trip. I'm okay with doing that kind of stuff alone. It's very illuminating to me to visual things and look back, see what's going on. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to survive in this world anyway. I'm already 76, and I never expected to live this long. I kept thinking when I was younger that 42 would be probably the number that I'd check out on. Still got a lot of life left in me. But they also told me that from that tree hitting the couch, that I've got 2 fractured vertebrae in my neck, which are vexing me mightily. And the house really needs repair. I put a GoFundMe thing up on Instagram. Hopefully that people could, even if it's a small donation, donate something so that I can try to get the house ready for winter. Get the foundation fixed on the side where the tree hit. And I wanted to start something else instead of just a GoFundMe, a new concept, Go Bud Me. And I would give out my P.O. Box 309, Orleans, California, 95556. And ask people to go bud me because I have no stash. I'm stuck out here in the middle of nowhere for now. And I'd have to go all the way to Eureka to try to get some. Don't really have any money because I've had to pay out everything to get the house at least partially started back up. I had to get PG&E out. I had to get a plumber out. I had to get an electrician out. So that kind of drained me, and I've been straight for about just underneath a month now since last time I smoked one. So maybe it'll catch on, the Go Bud Me thing, eh?
Holy cow, between the skateboarders, the old tree, and everything else, you've had one hell of a year, my friend. One hell of a year.
Yeah, it's been very strange. And then the fire is 38 miles away from us, but you go outside, you can smell. It smells like somebody's burning next door. The yard's burning or something. I mean, it's heavy. There's no blue sky to be seen anywhere. It's just pure white. you can't even really see very far. You can see about maybe 100, 150 yards. And then everything whites out after that. But the river is down below. And usually what happens is the river, being a thermocline, eventually sucks the smoke that down and out to sea. So I'm looking forward to that. Because every few days, even though there's a lot of smoke here, every few days, all of a sudden one day, there'll be blue skies and clear, and the smoke will have blown away down the river during the night. Because the river is one temperature and the air is another one. So the smoke tends to follow the river to the ocean, which is good. So yeah, I mean, okay, a tree fell on the house, but I own the house outright. I'm not making any payments on it. So was it? I mean, it was a bummer. The house is damaged. And I'd like to try to get the. We'll see how generous people are. Like I said, I put a GoFundMe, or my daughter put a GoFundMe on Instagram and on Twitter and other places. We'll see what happens. I think somebody gave it $15 so far. So not very serious, but it's a start. It doesn't have to be much, even just a few dollars, it adds up. People start chipping in here and there. It'll make my winter here a lot better because I'll be able to close off that side of the house and I won't be suffering from the winter cold. It gets damn cold up here. I mean, we'll have overnight 6-inch snow during the winter season here, and that'll happen a couple, 3 or 4 times. Maybe you'll have a couple of light snows too, but usually it snows 6 or 7 inches, so you have to creep out. Fortunately, the Forerunner doesn't care if I can go up and down the road. It doesn't matter what the conditions are. You shift it in 4-wheel. It's got front and rear locking differentials. So it just goes. Because I have to drive over 2 passes in the winter to get down to Eureka to shop or anything. And they're pretty high passes. They're always snowed in. And it's a kind of a scary drive because you're driving along the river there. A lot of the people that live up in this neck of the woods are, I think, retired rally car drivers. They will creep up on you and pass you like you're tied to a stump, even if you're going 10 miles over the speed limit. So gotta watch out for those guys. But I found a local store not that far from here that I go food shopping in the winter. It's the Indian. It's the local tribal store, and prices are extremely good there. Just everything is very extremely reasonable. They're polite beyond belief. They always want to help me out to the car, and they're always offering me samples of whatever's going on inside the store. So I've got to try some different delights that are, I'm sure, Indian based, but they're delicious. I had some pan bread the other day, and I bought one. I asked, "What's that?" And they said, "It's pan bread." So I said, "Wrap me one up." And I got home with it, and it was so good. I ate the whole damn thing. I get one there once a week now, so I'm addicted to the local pan bread. The way it's made, it's just incredibly delicious. It's almost a dessert. It's soft inside, almost like creamy, and the outside's crispy. It's got sugar on it, which is not something I need because I'm a diabetic, but my tongue's in charge, not me. It's been in charge for years. I'm sure everybody's got that same problem. Your tongue's in charge. Says that's why there's so many fat people in America. I'm not one to talk because I'm overweight too. But I talk anyway. So anyway, any questions? Anybody wants to ask any questions about anything? Because I'm available. I think this year, this coming year, we want to teach our prosperity trim, which we invented about 8 or 9 years ago in Mendocino when we were growing. They came around and they said, hey, you know, you can't have that many plants anymore because we always had about 600 or so. And so I said, well, how many can we have? And the sheriff's like, you can have 26. And you buy these little tags and you put one on each plant. That way, when someone visits and they see that your plants are tagged, they leave you alone. Otherwise, they chop them down and take them away with them. So all of a sudden, no more 600 plants. We had to somehow work it out with just 26 plants each. We had 2 pieces of property with 2 different names. So I developed this method of trimming where what we do is we get a bunch of 14 or 16 inch culvert, and we get 4-foot long pieces of it and put it over each plant and put a light at the top, and the plant doesn't bifurcate, doesn't make any branches, it just goes straight up towards that light. Once it gets that high, you can see in my pictures on Instagram, we take a razor, gloves and a mask and all that, and we cut the main stalk into 4 slices. And we lay a slice down and root tone it with powdered root tone. We do this in a 400 to 600 gallon bag. And basically what happens is the plant's not growing a stem anymore. Now it's just going to grow branches because you've eliminated the stem. So all these branches go up on the pieces that you laid down, and usually you get somewhere between 14 and 22 pounds. And every one of the buds will be about 2.5 feet long, and minimum size of beer can or 3 beer cans thickness all the way up, and they're all identical. It grows like a dome, like the sporting dome. You know, you go around it, and it's on the edges. It's one height, and in the middle, it's another. But they only grow 7 or 8 feet tall max, and you can grow 26 of them that are having a 20-pound yield. Pretty much be where you are when you were growing the 600 plants, and just letting them grow up and whacking them down. We, of course, had a formula that we put in the bags, 50% fresh rabbit food from Aunt Mary's Rabbit Meat Farm. We would go there, dump trucks. Her husband sold earthworms that he grew in the poop underneath the cages. And so this poop would pile up, and we'd go there and shovel it out and take it back, and we'd use that for about 30 or 40% of our 400-pound bag would be that rabbit poop with about, I don't know, 10 million or so earthworms in it, because the husband had passed away. And she didn't know what to do with the worms, so we would buy the whole thing from her. We grew some really stupendous plants. I mean, we grew Blue Dream way back when in the 80s, and High Times had a pot growing contest, and you had to submit your top bud and a 1/4 pound of the pot, and you would give it to somebody in the street who would drive up and then if you got into the running, they would come downtown and pick you up, put a blindfold on you back in the limousine and take you to where the judging and the contest was. And the first year we tried, and we had Blue Dream, and it was so well received that we took 6th place overall. And there was like hundreds and hundreds of people there that brought stuff. So we were doing pretty good to come in 6th place, at least I thought. And Blue Dream changed as the years went by. People mixed it with different things, of course. One of my favorite mixes was Blue Dream Chem Dog. They made a very nice flavor and very nice high. And I enjoyed growing that. We used to grow 300 or 400 pounds of that, so we always had a lot of stash around. We were, smoking 1-inch thick joints in those days. But yeah, I'm not on a growing farm. I mean, my place here is 7 acres, and I do have a 99 plant exemption, but I didn't use it this year. In fact, I didn't even grow one plant because of all the health issues and stuff. For a while, I was really dragging ass because the diabetes was doing a number on me. It was escalating its game. Diabetes never really gets better. It keeps getting worse no matter what. Eventually it kills you. But in the meantime, you can try fighting it off and keeping it under control to extend your life a bit, however worthless it may be. And so basically that's what I was doing, just trying to get by. They told me 14 years ago I had Agent Orange diabetes. I'm still alive. I'm starting to get numb feelings in my feet though, which just killed my balance, which is why I didn't really grow this year, because the property is very slanted. And if I try walking down there, even with 2 canes, I fall down a lot. I get tired of falling down. I'm trying to get the VA to give me a tracked wheelchair, one with tracks, so that I can go out on the property. I filed for 100% disability these days because so many things going on. Vietnam, I got shot. I had my back together from that wounding. And they provide me with a lot of pain all the time. They've hurt me ever since 1969 when they put them in. They said, this is going to relieve a lot of your pain and stuff. And I'm like, great. I went to sleep, woke up, and I had to spend 4 months laying in bed. And when I got up, first thing I noticed was, hey, this hurts like a motherfucker. It's never stopped hurting. They tried to giving me opioids, Valiums. I never took any of it. And they gave me I forget what they were, one of the opioids they gave me. I got home and I took 1 pill of it, and my tongue was swollen for 3 days. I could hardly talk. It sounded like I was drunk. And I'm not fond of the opioid high. I know a lot of people are, but I'm not one of them. So I don't take those. I mean, I use ibuprofen and meditation. If it gets really bad, I will lay down on my stomach with a pillow under my hips and try not to move for a while. It's I got it serving my country. Should have gone to Canada, but anyway, I didn't. And my dad was in Vietnam. He was in the army. And he went there. I volunteered to go because I don't know why, some dumb reason, like I was going to go there and take my dad. I wasn't even allowed to be in the same outfit he was in. Miles apart. he just recently died from Agent Orange bone cancer. And the VA told me a month ago that I still had more Agent Orange in my blood than almost any veteran in the country anywhere who was still alive. And I thought, well, great. You guys have obviously missed some information there. So my doctor said, well, what did we miss? And I said, didn't you tell me that my health was still pretty good, even though I'm 76 and Agent Orange is in there? He said, yeah. And I said, so clearly, when you get the right dose of Agent Orange in your body, it acts as a preservative. So I'm a walking pickle. I'm still here, and doesn't look like I'm going to die. They told me that I have a broken neck, but I've had so many things broken, it isn't funny. That's somehow just, they wanted me to come in and maybe fit me up with a cervical collar. And I was like, yeah, one of those things like the dogs wear so they can't chew themselves. Doctor said, well, no, not that bad, but I didn't want it anyway. And so I'm surviving. The only opioid I ever enjoyed was 2 years ago. I took a fall and both my hands hit the ground and they both swelled up like footballs. I went to the emergency room and she said, well, if you don't mind, I'm going to give you a shot of, what's it? Some kind of, it was one of the opioids, but hydromorphone. And I said, okay. So she gave me the shot, and man, talk about smooth and nice. And my hand stopped hurting, and I was like, do I take some of that home with me? She says, no, I'll give you pills to take home with you. But the pills weren't the same, and I couldn't take them. And so they weren't going to help me start a shot addiction. So I had to get over that one. You can't always get what you want, can you? Although that doesn't mean you can't try all the time. You keep trying to get what you want. I mean, if you don't try, you're never going to realize any of your dreams. I mean, I've had 2 full, complete careers. I trained as an osteopath, a doctor of osteopathy, and I worked in a free hospital in India for 12 years. And I treated tens of thousands of people around the world, Olympic athletes and so forth. And that was one career. And then back in 1968, I noticed after seeing a gas tank get a hole shot through it, a butane tank in Vietnam, that gave me the understanding there was a rose bush behind it and all the gas shot out. Fortunately, it didn't blow up because it wasn't a tracer round. It was just armor piercing, and it went through the tank on both sides. So the gas was shooting out, and I was hiding behind another tank because I thought any minute this is going to explode. And it didn't. And then at the end, I went over and I saw the ground looked oily. I bent down and stuck my finger in it, and it was the oil from the rose bush and the Dieffenbachia bush behind this tank into oil on the ground. But that was what woke up my head to the idea of gas extraction. It wasn't much longer. A few weeks later, I went to the hooch and I got a bottle of Ronson lighter fluid back then, which was butane, because we were in Asia and they don't have propane and things in Asia. Everything is butane, even the refrigerators and all. So I took a big pen, took the core out of it, packed it with bud, turned it upside down so the pointy end was sticking up, stuck the Ronson bottle on it and gave it a push, And at the end, onto a little tray I had brought from mess hall, was a little puddle of red oil bubbling. That was in 1967. And I rolled up a doober and smoked it. Holy shit. So I rolled a few more up and I smoked them with the guys in the hooch, and everybody was, what the fuck, you know? I mean, already the pot in Vietnam was outstanding, and what I was extracting was these big Buddha sticks. There was two kinds of Thai sticks you could get in Vietnam. One which was the size of a pencil, and a really thin little sliver of bamboo that pulled off the splinter to wrap the buds onto it. That was one. And then after a while, someone showed up with these Buddha sticks, and they were huge sticks. And they had, I mean, they were maybe 6 inches long and had buds on the outside. And they used these little bamboo threads to tie it on. So I used to go to Thailand on R&R, and I would catch the MATS, military air transport. You could fly them free from Vietnam to go to R&R or whatever. You can even fly them back to States or around the world. As long as you were in the service and you had your ID with you, wherever they were going. Of course, it's not going to be a plane that's got stewardesses and so forth. You know, bench seats and louder than a motherfucker. And plus, in those days, everything was mostly propeller. It was like, I'm like from the Wright brothers era. You know, when I went to Vietnam, I went on DC-3 or DC-4, 4-engine. It took us 5 days to fly to Vietnam with it. We flew to Hawaii, took a day and a half. From there to Guam, then to Wake, and to Okinawa, and then to Vietnam. But it's fucking fair number of the stewardesses got drunk as skunks. And when we got over Vietnam, the pilot said, "We're going to circle for a while because the base where we're going to land you at is under a rocket attack right now." So everybody got kind of nervous, and we started ordering drinks. By the time we did land on the ground, everybody was 3 sheets to the wind. And we had winter uniforms on, and it was hotter than 80. But anyway, then when I left Vietnam, we left on a jet, and that was the first jet I had ever flown on, which was kind of scary at the time for me because I'd never been on one. And it was a new thing, and they wanted to. There was no stopping at islands along the way. They were just going to fly from there to San Francisco to Oakland. And that was a scary thought because when you went there, like I said, you stopped at all these islands. You would fly for 12, 14 hours, stop, sleep. They would gas the plane up, seal the oil leaks up again, and boom, off you'd go again. It was on Flying Tiger Airlines. If you ever look up any of the Vietnam stuff, they were famous. They were famous for their stewardesses. Their stewardesses would let us down gently into Vietnam. It took a week to get there, and by then you'd known them biblically. It was at the age, you know, I was just turning 18. I had gone in the Army on my 17th birthday. My dad dropped me off at the recruiting station and said, "You're a man now, son. Take care of yourself. Don't come back home. I can't take care of you." I had 11 brothers and sisters, so Dad was just doing what he had to do. I was firstborn, so I also had to be first out the door, and I was. And then Dad showed up in Vietnam, but he was working for the PX, and he was 35 years in the Army. Then he retired and got a job working for the exchange service, which is what he did when he was in the Army. So they wanted to hire him because he knew what he was doing. And, yeah, he sort of did dad was the toughest guy I ever knew. He was a great guy. He's the guy that changed me into a world-class noticer. And that's where all my various patents came from, by paying attention to processes and what's going on. And we're in the midst of selling our patent now to Scientific 710. So they're going to be building and making the machine, except for the first guys that we had make the machine didn't know their ass from a hole in the ground. And so it turned out to be a lot of trouble for us because it never would live up to what I proposed for it. I told the manufacturer, hey, this has got to work once an hour. He's like, okay. They built it, but it didn't work once an hour. You know, it had to have multiple hours. But Scientific 710 is actually going to build it according to the patent. And that's not what the other guys did. They didn't build it according to the patent. They just built it. They were gas recovery people. They worked out in the North Sea. And they worked with the Navy putting gas on big barges. And so they had all these pumps. They knew about that, but they had no idea about any of the rest of it. So it ended up being kind of a boondoggle. But even though Scientific 710 will be taking over the patent, we're still going to have a finger in the pie. That'll be good. Between that and 100% disability, hopefully by next year, maybe the house fixed up a bit, put the foundation back on. Hopefully they get enough people donating so that they close the house up before winter, because otherwise I'm going to have to do some strange shit with tarps and blankets and rugs and stuff to seal up that end of the house so that I'm not suffering during the winter. Kind of done with the suffering thing. I did it a lot, and I'd now like to sign off on that, not suffer anymore. But if I don't have to, I mean, Cosmos does what it's going to do. There's nothing much you can do about it except go along with it and try to find the best path through everything. I always looked at stumbling blocks as stepping stones instead. I always kept that attitude. I guess because Dad was in the Army, I sort of developed a can-do attitude. So when I wrote the patent, I wrote it we built a factory in Kansas, and it's got a 2,500 kilo capacity at one whack. Big giant son of a bitch. It's 40 feet tall. And I filed the patent based on that. And there was a lot of things that were in the patent that were unheard of until then, like low temperature vacuum boil. I was faced with the idea of you'd have to stir things. You put things in this chamber. You want to make sure the gas gets to every little area so that you get a full extraction. And so I developed a thing called low temperature vacuum boil, where I would turn on the recovery machine and add gas at the same time to the machine. And what would happen would be, since it was under partial vacuum, they would create all these little sonic bubbles. And it would come off the inside of the container, because I put tiny holes everywhere because I wanted to have these bubbles. And these bubbles stirred everything up. And so we got 100% yields, and we worked for the big perfume companies for 15 years. I mean, we made Joy perfume and all the really expensive perfumes. We didn't make perfume itself. We extracted all the oils, and we sent it to Berthe, the company that we were working with, would change it into perfumes.
I do have a question for you. Red Pill in chat there says he would like to know if you found a full range of terpenes, foul to pleasant, in the vacuum over the cold trap, or do they come out
because of the fact that we regulate the temperature of the gas, we make the gas just before it'll freeze in a separate chamber and pass the gas through that into the place where the biomass is. And in addition to that, instead of using a spray tip, we use Venturi, just like carburetors, little Venturi to pass the gas into a manifold that would then spray out from these Venturi. And these Venturi, when they would spray that cold gas out, they would also lower the temperature even more until you had this very complete adiabatic cooling. It would freeze down the material inside. And when it was, after it was frozen, the only things that would come out would be oil and the terpenes. And so we had, we started seeing terpenes when we were extracting flowers for the perfume companies. We would extract 2,500 pounds of roses, and then you would get 20 gallons of terpenes out of the deal. And they were very potent. Collection chamber. Otherwise, the first time we discovered that, we extracted, 2,000 pounds of lavender from, and all of a sudden we started giggling. And I looked at Johnny and I said, "What's so funny?" He said, "I don't know." And then I started laughing. And we finally figured out that lavender, if you're breathing those terpenes in, then you're taking enough of it, you get high. It definitely stones you. You start laughing. And, all the different terpenes, jalapeno peppers. And when we opened up the chamber to take the oil out, couldn't breathe anymore all of a sudden. Your lungs just said, "No, I'm not going to breathe that in." So we ran outside. And, the nose was dripping and we were coughing our lungs out. And pretty soon here comes two mice running out of the building too. They decided to vacate too. Anyway, we waited until it was quiet. We had a 16-foot, 30-foot wide door. We opened it up. And after that, we would put these special gas masks on that we would buy from 3M. If we had any doubt, like once we did mustard seed for somebody, and we used hazmat suits for that because the stuff was toxic beyond belief. We extracted over 14,000 different seeds, flowers, leaves, root, bark, animal tissue, fungi, you name it. Over those years, we extracted 14,000 different things for Roberta. We had I've still got a freezer sitting there in Kansas at the factory that's got anywhere from 2 gram to 50 gram samples of extracts that we kept so that we could compare them. Like one year we might get roses, and the next year we would get roses again. And then we would test most of them to see how they matched up to each other. And that way we would have a record of all that. So we still got all that stuff sitting there in Kansas, frozen in an ammonia refrigerator. And nice kind of 1,000 square foot lab upstairs in the factory. It's, it's kind of all the nice stuff in it. So over the years, I saw more terpenes than you can point a stick at. And now we're starting to, Kansas has gone, it's okay to extract hemp now. And it's in the works to be like Oklahoma and the rest of them to extract THC. And when that opens up, that factory will be worth a fortune because you can do 2,500 kilos an hour, which should be enough to supply probably the West Coast. Having oil anyway. The catch chamber is 900 gallons. And if you figure that out, that's a lot of THC. I did a lot of things. We would, for instance, if you wanted to look at the idea of making something healthy, I would extract CBD oil or THC oil, depending on what, along with the herbs that you wanted. Like, for instance, if you wanted to have a good salad dressing that was also healthy and caused you to detox. Well, I mean, we put all the things in there that you would normally put into a chamber to extract out, and along with the CBD, it made some very interesting salad dressings that we eventually licensed to another company. It still makes them. But, being ever curious and ever wanting to try something new, I was always with nose to the grindstone, taking care of the family and the kids. And as you know, my wife of 38 years, a couple of years ago, suffered a triple aneurysm. Somehow she survived it at age 62. She woke up scratching herself saying, "I'm hungry. Where are we at? What's going on here?" Anyway. Then they said, "Well, you had an aneurysm." She goes, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Do you know what the date is?" And she said, "Yes, May 1998. No, that was 20 years ago. So she didn't really remember anything past 1998, which is about when our relationship started to get strong and become a couple. But she doesn't remember that anymore. And she only remembers now what her sisters are. Bad news bears. They only have bad attitudes about everybody. They can't help it. They're unhappy in their bodies and their lives, and so therefore they don't want anybody else to be happy, least of all Annie. Annie was the black sheep of the family. And she wanted to go live with them because she remembered them. She grew up with them. She didn't grow up with me. So she didn't really remember me, so she didn't want to stay here anymore. Can't blame her. You can't force somebody to love you. It doesn't matter how I feel. She doesn't feel it. So c'est la guerre, As the French say, that's war. Took me about 3 years to get over that because I would see her and talk to her, but it wasn't Annie. It was somebody new and different. And whenever I would call her on the phone, she would always talk to me like I was an insurance salesman on this second call, which is, as the song goes, kind of a drag. Yeah, I just had to give it up and let her do what she was going to do. Nothing I could do about it. So I live alone at the top of a mountain in the middle of fucking nowhere. Me, my cougar, my bear, my parrot, Rosie, who's got an opinion on everything. I've had her since she was just after egg stage. So she's learned lots and lots of words and phrases. She's smart because I'll give her a treat she likes and she'll grab it and then say delicious. I didn't teach her to say delicious when I gave her the treat. She just decided to use that word. So she's pretty smart. And she says a lot of things that are kind of disarming. I have a friend who said, "Hey, can you talk? What can you say?" And she will say, "I can talk. Can you fly?" And I don't know where that stuff comes from, but it comes. She's my main buddy. The phone rings, she wants to answer it. She sits on my shoulder pretty much all day. Whispers in my ear and talks to me. when somebody calls on the phone, she'll want to be part of the conversation. So she's my companion and my watchdog, and pretty much everything. It's okay living alone. It's got a lot of pluses. You wash the dishes when you want, and eat when you want, eat what you want, and there's nobody there telling you, hey, don't eat that or eat this, or which was a constant theme back when I was married, and it was always trying to get me to. She wanted for years, wanted me to be a vegetarian. So I became a vegetarian. And now that she had the aneurysm, she eats steak once a week. She's a big meat eater. And I was like, remember being vegetarian? I go, yeah, I know you don't. You really don't remember much of anything. So it's been hard. I try to see what it would be like to have her here again, but she just came here for a short period of time and she wanted to go back to Hawaii and be with her sisters. But she didn't feel comfortable because she didn't really know me. And I can be abrasive. I you know, I'm the first one to admit that. My dad was in the Army. I grew up with him. He was always slapping you in the back of the head, telling you, pay attention. He used to say, pay attention. If you don't pay attention, son, this world will chew you up and spit you out. So I took him on his word.
It's very tough.
So with that, did that answer the question?
Like that with, I said it's very tough with lots of loved ones like that to slip out of their memory. You know, as you're saying, I can't imagine.
He was just trying to give me a head start in life. That's all. He was in the hospital with bone and lung cancer. And I hadn't seen him for years. So I went there and showed him the patents and the pictures of the factory. He was happy. He said, you really made something out of yourself, son. He goes, I respect that. He says, your brothers and sisters are all drunkards and ne'er-do-wells. I said, well, yeah, sorry, Dad. Didn't have anything to do with it. So I got a cot and I put it next to his bed. And I spent the last 6 weeks of his life talking with him every night. My cot was right next to his. And we would hold hands while he went to sleep. And he told me all the things in the world that he was afraid of, what was going on. He told me he was afraid of dying. I was a little surprised, and I said, well, I'm afraid that there won't be anything. It'll just be nothing afterwards. I'll be gone. I won't be here. And I said, well, that's your ego part of you crying out because it doesn't want to be disassociated. But I said, but even if that were the case, suppose that there was nothing. I said, then what is there to be afraid of? And then he laughed and he said, well, I didn't think of it that way. And I said, well, it's the truth. And so we talked about incarnation, all that stuff. And actually, those 6 weeks, we got to know each other. Like I didn't really get to know him when I was growing up because he was the authoritarian in the house. And it was just do this, do that. And that was the story. So I got to know him, and he started having dreams that the angels were coming and talking to him. And the night that he passed away, maybe 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, he squeezed my hand and woke me up. And I said, yeah, Dad, what's up? And he says, Johnny, remember I told you I was dreaming of the angels? And I said, yeah, Pop. And he said, they're here now and they've come to pick me away. And they said I could say goodbye to you. And I thought, Pop, he grew a lot. He went a long ways to be at the place where he could feel that and say that. And I said, well, I love you, Dad. And he said, I love you too, son. He says, can you tell your mother and your brothers and your sisters that I loved them the best I could? And I just couldn't do any more than what I did because it was difficult taking care of all of them. I said, okay, I will. And I bent over and hugged him, and he kissed me on the cheek and said, I love you, first time in my life. To hear that from him, which is the toughest guy in the world. And I thought, well, if he can say that, I can too. And it kind of unlocked my self-limiting, never say things like I love you to people. So then he took a deep breath and he let it out. And there was kind of almost like thunder in the room. It was a clap. And I felt his hand tighten on mine, and then his hand went loose, and he was gone. And I sat there with his body for, well, until the morning when the nurse came in. She said, how's your dad? And I said, he passed away last night, some hours ago. She was, oh, you're still here? And I said, yeah, he's my dad. Yeah, I'm still here. And she's like, well, usually we like to take the body down to the morgue. And I said, well, don't get in a hurry, lady. I'm saying goodbye to somebody deep inside loving. And you have to come to a resolution about that. Hey, the people that you love, go somewhere right now and call them and tell them you love them, or hug them when you get a chance. Because you just don't know. I mean, that morning I was laughing with Dad, and he sent me over to what's that place where you get this wings, Hooters. He sent me over to Hooters to get him a plate of wings because he was feeling better. And that night he passed away. So keep in touch with the people you love. It's how you keep your love and yourself alive. They'll come, you won't see him again. At least it's not here. We in the next plane looked a lot into spirituality. I studied all the various religions. I studied the Sikh religion. And when I say I studied them, I don't say it lightly. I studied the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, which is the Sikh Bible. And from studying it while I was in Amritsar at the Golden Temple, I actually woke up one morning and realized that I knew the first pages of it in my heart, and I could say it. Ekankar Satnam Karta Nirbhau Nirvir Kalamut Ajuni Saibang Prasad Jap such good. Just somehow went in me, and I kept them. And I kept a lot of things throughout my life like that because they had a meaning to me at the moment when they entered into myself, into my being. And there's really nothing on this world. This is a big school. The only lesson here is love. All the rest of the things that happen lead to understanding about love. Pain, loss, it all has the ending point of love if you resolve it, if you learn about yourself. If you don't learn about yourself, you'll be back anyway. Sooner or later, you'll learn it. But you're better off to go after it sooner rather than later, if you can. You have to pay attention to yourself. Don't listen to your brain too much. You'll overthink things. listen to your heart. Your brain's kind of an adding machine that the heart uses. And it can be the other way around. Sometimes the heart is used by the brain for evil purposes. People get confused about what's good, what's not good. And I always recommend to you that you follow the path of your heart, because your heart's probably not going to lie to you if you actually sit down and listen to it. It's not hard to do, except to be quiet. But open yourself up to your own inner voice. It will come to you. I mean, all of the knowledge that I've been given, I came to understand, came from listening to my heart. When I wrote my patents, I came to understanding of all these things. I went to medical school, all because of I wanted to be in tune with my heart and make sure I was doing the right thing. Never wanted to do vengeance on anybody or hurt anybody. And that was a tough deal, but I was a combat field medic in Vietnam. So I didn't really carry a gun. They offered me one. When we got to Vietnam, they offered us one. They gave me, first you get a medic's backpack when you're a medic, which is about an 80-pound deal. And then they offer you after that either a gun, a pistol, or a rifle. And you've already got 80 pounds, and so now do you want a 14-pound pistol and ammunition to go along with that? It's 100 degrees outside and 100% humidity. So answer was no. Other people do the shooting, and I'll do the bandaging. But a lot of people were like, "You don't have a gun?" I'm like, "No, I don't." Everybody wanted to kind of have a gun in Vietnam. I don't blame them, but if I was responsible for their well-being and wounds, I needed to not be in a position where I say, "Well, sorry, I can't help you because I got a gun and ammo, which took place of the supplies I would have needed to take care of you." That's not going to fly. So you would just surrender yourself to the idea that you're going to be okay. And even at that, I still got shot. I got shot because I wasn't paying attention for a minute. A friend of mine from high school showed up in Vietnam in the company. And about 3 weeks in, he got shot in the upper left side of his chest. And he started hyperventilating. And then he died, and I just couldn't stop him. He was just determined to die. And so he did. And that was a tough deal for me. I had a lot of tough deals in Vietnam. As a medic, you attend a lot of people's last 5 minutes of life. And sometimes it's quite a strain. I mean, people think you're their mother or their father or that you're Jesus or something along those lines. And then they want you to fill out the rest of what they're going through in the moments prior to death. And when you're 18, that can be stressful. You know, that's probably why I started smoking pot. I was on the back of this, I got ambushed. Went off to the side of the road because the lead vehicle was blown up and totally disabled, so there was no way to get around it. And up in Swan Lock, it was all these rubber plantations, and the trees were right up to the edge of the road, so you couldn't really go anywhere. The French had that all worked out. They thought it was going to everything was going to be okay forever. But Dien Bien Phu changed all that. And so I was laying down behind the wheel of a deuce and a half, the back wheel. and there was a black guy up by the front wheel. And I was pissing myself. I don't mind saying I was literally wetting myself because they were firing at us with machine guns, and the bullets would hit the rocks and the dirt by you, and it would explode and sting and hit you. And you're just like, when is one of these things going to hit me? And you're sitting there shitting a brick, or you're making one and you're going. And the black guy that was up by the front wheel flings this really fat cigarette at me. He says, "Hey man, take some puffs off that and it'll mellow you out and calm you down." Along about then, I mean, I probably would have tried, nuclear isotopes if I thought it was going to calm me down, because when they're firing at you like that, you truly are crapping yourself, because it's like any second the bullets are flying. You don't know which one of them is going to get you or not. So I took 3 or 4 puffs off it, and my body got warm, and I relaxed up against the wheel, even though bullets were hitting the other wheel on the other side of the truck. And all of a sudden, a rock hit me in the head, and I looked up, and it was the cook up by the front wheel, and he goes, "Hey, don't park on that, man. Toss it back over here." So I Beauregarded my first joint, and it was under fire in the middle of a rubber plantation in a place called the Lot. And of course, I've remained stoned ever since then, except for this last month here. I mean, stuff has changed around this year, and I didn't grow any pot, and who can afford to buy it? I mean, things are changing right now. I just had a friend call me and said he could get me a quarter pound for $300 of peanut butter breath or something. And I was like, please do. So hopefully here in the next few days I'll have some fresh, because I have none now, and I haven't had for 3.5 weeks. Getting so down that I'm starting to have straight hallucinations. Found myself munching on mushrooms every night for a few days because I didn't have any pot. And the mushrooms sort of kind of gently carried you through some of that. Because you would always have the philosophical thing, I don't need pot, I've got mushrooms. Until you come down from mushrooms, then you're like, oh shit, I'm getting a joint. Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers lives again. This time not in cartoons or in a comic book. When I first came back from Vietnam, I went to Ripoff Press in San Francisco because there's a strange building that was wedge shaped in San Francisco on a street corner. And the road actually went on both sides of the building, and it had a big sign out front that said Ripoff Press. So I wanted to go in and see what it was about, and that's when they were making the underground comics, Furry Freak Brothers and Gilbert Gottlieb, and all the underground comics that came to be. And they were all, I was in there, and everybody's eyes were quite open. And I said to the guy, "What's up?" And he goes, "Well, we're all tripping. You want to trip with us?" So I ended up tripping in San Francisco in this building in the middle. And they hired me to draw some backgrounds because I can draw. So occasionally, if you look to some of the old Freak Brother comic books on a corner of a tree root or on the rim of a fire hydrant, you'll see JHD. And that was me putting my 2 cents worth in. Never wasn't famous or anything for sure, because all I was drawing was fire hydrants and garbage cans and stuff. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. Went to a lot of acid parties in those days. Boy, oh boy, did we. We would go to acid parties that would last for like 3 or 4 days. You just keep dosing.
Speaking of acid,
Brains up.
there wasn't. What are your thoughts on Charlie Manson, just out of left field. Them, that era.
Say again now.
There was a question about Red Pill. He would like to know your thoughts on Charlie Manson. You were on talking about acid. They kind of connected there. What were your thoughts on Charlie Manson back in the day?
Hard to understand what that question was. Couldn't quite make you out. But when I was in those days, the acid was coming from Marin, from the Brotherhood of Light. And you go across the bridge into Marin. If you knew them, which we did, you buy grams from them. You'd buy a gram in a small bottle that would change into 4,400 hits. We would buy numbers of grams, and we'd tab it up and take it to Grateful Dead concerts. And when we first decided to do that, we looked around for a pill press, and in those days, you dare not ask anybody for a pill press because they turn you into the FBI right away. So I went to a cat food company that was making cat food with a similar thing to a pill press, stamping out these little stars. And they had a used one, and so I bought it for them. And I took the dyes to a dye maker there in Oakland and had him cut pill faces in it. I told him I worked for a company that made pills. And we would use binders and Kool-Aid and cocoa and whatever we could and stamp out pills all fucking night long for days before a Grateful Dead concert. You might work up there stamping pills out for like 10 hours. You would be so fucking wasted. I think the highest I ever got was somebody showed up with some mescaline and they wanted us to tab it up. We made these big giant chocolate saucers. And boy, we tabbed it up for like 28 hours and gave it to the guy. And then when we left the place where we were tabbing it up, which was about 8 blocks from the house in Hollywood area, North Hollywood, it took us 6 hours to walk home because we were lost. We couldn't find the house anymore. We were so fucking high. And finally, Mike, the one guy we were tripping with there, he stopped on the street corner and started talking to a lamppost. And the lamppost gave him directions to the house. And we were only 4 or 5 blocks away. We went back to the house. And those were crazy days. He was a big time stoner, and we went to a party once. He disappeared at the party, and this is about the time that speed freaks started showing up and bringing speed into the picture instead of psychedelics. And someone said that he was in the kitchen in the pantry. So this was the next morning. So I went in there and he was sitting there. Right across from him was a mannequin. And the mannequin didn't have a head. Instead, it had a toilet brush stuck down in the neck hole. And I said, "Hey, Mike, come on, let's go home." He's like, I've been there talking to this dude here for some hours. And it's been very interesting conversation." I said, I picked him up and I herded him out back to the house, and I said, "So what kind of conversation were you having with that mannequin?" He said, "Oh, the mannequin never said a word, but the toilet brush spoke 5 languages." And that's when I knew that speed was not a good thing. It was tripping my friend out so bad that he didn't know what was going on for 2 weeks. Finally, he came down a couple of weeks later. That was speed in those days. It's hard to get him off of it. And eventually he turned into a speed freak and disappeared off into the jungle of the world. Whatever happened to him, I have no idea. he just disappeared from the place one night and never saw him again. So those were strange days. I mean, when I first came back to Vietnam, I bought a 1965 2+2 Mustang because I had all this accumulated leave pay and combat pay from Vietnam. I was there 30 months. So I went down to the Ford dealership and bought this new 2+2 Mustang. I was driving it around San Francisco. When I came to one of the ramps, there was this hippie guy in a green pantsuit and long blonde hair and a chick hitchhiking. So I pulled over. I had a jar full of Vietnamese pot in the car with me because I was down. In those days, it wasn't such a big deal. You could be smoking a joint on a bench in Berkeley. Police would pull up, shoot you the peace sign, and drive away. And that was long before anything became legal, but it was a much mellower time, a mellower day. And Berkeley was full of hippies and not criminals and ripoffs and rapists and whatever. So those were a different time. It was a kind of a mellow time. I mean, I was in a laundromat doing some laundry, and I had a great big fat. It was my birthday. I had a big joint behind my ear, and they had all kinds of oils and stuff in it. It had stains on it. And a highway patrol guy walked in, and he was talking to his lady because they'd had a robbery there. Then he walked up to me and he pulls this joint off my ear. He's looking at me. He says, "What's that?" And I said, "Whoa!" I said, "That's amazing. Can you do that again?" He said, "Not funny." And I said, "Well, sorry. I guess it's my birthday, and that's my birthday joint." So he split it open, and he went over and tossed it in the trash can, and he said, "And leave it there. You know, you don't need it. Go out and get some fresh air instead." He got in the car and drove away. 5 minutes later, I opened up the trash can, got it out, stuck a new paper around it, and smoked it anyway. But I mean, it was a different time, you know, it was a different day. Now, of course, it's like, yeah, smoke wherever the fuck you want. I like that. I wish I had a stash big enough to support it. Like I said, I'm going to start a new service. Instead of GoFundMe, it's going to be GoBudMe.
So we've been putting them in chat, and it is linked in the description of the title. Hopefully it helps out some. Both times Foe in chat would like to know if you ever checked out the Laos weed scene, and if you've ever had any of the Laos weed dipped in opium.
Couldn't understand the word you said.
Just my luck. Hold on. I've got my headset on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but then it sort of fades away into obscurity. And maybe if I put my earphones on.
No, I'll switch links here in a second. But the question is if you've ever been to Laos to check out the weed scene, and have you ever had any Laos weed dipped in opium?
If I've ever been to what?
He wants to know if you've ever been to Laos to check out the weed scene, or if you've had any of the Laos.
Laos?
Yes, Laos. Or if you've ever
Laos,
had any
Laos.
Yes, or had some of the Laos
I
weed
mean,
in opium.
well, I'm not an opium fan, but when I was in Vietnam, we certainly, on a couple of occasions, went to Cambodia and Laos. And the weed in Cambodia was pretty amazing because it looked almost like a decorative plant, really long, thin, skinny leaves, and really tight, crazy, delicious buds from that. And I think some of the best pot I had was some Cambodian weed that I picked up a couple of times when I was there. I wasn't always able to get it because you had to have a reason to go to Cambodia, even on a map, military air transport. And you could never have a good reason because you weren't supposed to be going to Cambodia. But occasionally, a friend would alert me that a flight was going to go there and I could get on and go there and score. Everybody in Laos, Vietnam, and Cambodia was selling pot to GIs in those days. I mean, everywhere you turned, somebody was like, "You want marijuana?" And of course, we always did. They always wanted to trade pot for Salem cigarettes. And they would take the cigarettes, open them up at the bottom, carefully open the pack up, extract all the tobacco out of the cigarettes, fill it up with pot and give it back to you. And then they would smoke the Salem tobacco in a little wooden pipe. That was quite common and popular in Vietnam. So it was always looking forward to trading off a carton of cigarettes for a quarter pound of weed, which I always thought was an excellent trade. Pakistan was always, "You got Salem?" They would take Cools too, but they preferred Salem's. I never smoked a cigarette in my life, so I thought, okay, I can actually trade some poisonous, nasty shit off for some good weed. Let's get down. So anyway, any other questions?
Yes, sir. There is actually a question about growing cacti. Go back up here. He says, I'd like to know more about if he's cultivated cacti in beds in earth and how's the soil being amended.
Well, I usually buy cactus soil, and I started growing peyote about 5 years ago, and it takes a long time for a peyote plant to come, but you can just buy regular cactus soil, and they'll be quite happy living in that. You just got to keep them watered for the first 2 years or so, and pretty much 100% humidity until they get to be over, say, 3/8 of an inch around, and then you can start watering them less often. And it doesn't always have to be 100% humidity. But I do have some strains of peyote that will grow outside where I live in the mountains. And they were from North Texas, from where it gets really, really fucking cold. It's very nice looking peyote plant, which is very potent. Goes there. And I managed to get a few hundred seeds of it. And I've been growing some of those, and I'll plant them around the property. And someday I'll die, and the kids and other friends will come and look and go, "Hey, there's John's cactus nursery." And I've also got a small greenhouse that I grow the other ones in that don't like the winter so well. I keep it. It's a plexiglass thing, and it stays warm in the winter, even when it's snowing outside. Go in there, it's be nice and toasty warm. Because I have it hooked up to a solar panel, and there's a tiny heater in there. when it gets really cold, the heater comes on and blows. But there's a few peyote strains that will grow outside, even in the winter when the snow, everything. And those are particularly potent too, by the way. You always have to treat peyote with respect, but understand that it grows out in the middle of Texas, the middle of fucking buttfuck Egypt, nowhere, underneath mesquite bushes. And so, just finding them. I used to go down to Texas where the beds are, before they started watching everybody that comes and goes. Jesus Christ. Now it's like, I pull you over and like, where are you going? What are you doing down here? You don't live here. Other stupid shit like that, but not much you can do about it. But anyway, I have a friend there, and I've got 18 varieties of peyote plants, all the ones that grow all over. Growing them all. I love mescaline. And do I love it? It is the mellowest, greatest high. It's almost like it's an entactogen. It's like an MDA or MDMA. And except for colors are crazy on mescaline. You've got like a red plastic cup. It'll be pouring the color red off onto the floor all the while you're high. And I like mescaline also makes you communicate with everything. Like you don't even want to kick a rock out of your path where you're walking, because that's that rock's place. And, you shouldn't kick it out of the path just because you're there. You're not a cosmic event that requires removal of the rock that's been sitting there for like maybe 10,000 years or more. But yeah, I think the world everybody should get a chance to try peyote once at least in your life. Then my newest high that I think is a cosmic joke on the world is 5-MeO-DMT. It comes off toad's ass. And I thought it was extremely humorous that the cosmos decided to hide the secret to the universe on a toad's ass. You ever had 5-MeO-DMT?
I have not.
You haven't, have you?
I have not.
Well, you owe it to yourself to try it, let me tell you. It opens your mind. You go to the place where everything started. I mean, you go there, you understand everything, you understand everyone. You're not angry anymore. It's the best thing ever. I know DMT is great, but 5-MeO-DMT that comes off the bufo, the Colorado River toad, is amazing stuff. And it's the first thing I've had that I thought was even better than mescaline. And I thought mescaline was the cat's pajamas for 30 years or so. But that frog toxin it's only a 5-minute trip. So if you get a chance to take it, because it's 5 minutes and 5 million years. You actually feel yourself go through a change in that 5 minutes. It seems like it lasts for 100 years. It's just 5 minutes or so, and after that, you can't be angry at anybody ever again. It's not there. You start to realize how connected we all are, and everything is connection. And if you didn't know before you smoked some toxin off a frog's ass, you definitely know afterwards. I thought that was a sure sign that God definitely had a sense of humor, that he hid the cosmic thing on a toad's butt. But yeah, I think everybody should have to have a dose of that. Not an opportunity to take it, but to actually have a dose of it. Because if everybody in the whole world dosed on it tonight, the world would be a different place tomorrow. There wouldn't be any Taliban, there wouldn't be any shootings. People would leave guns to rust and rot. And, the whole lesson that we're here for, which is love, would really figure into man's actions and understanding and doing things. You know, I worked at a free hospital in India for 11 years, taking care of little kids in the heart ward who had heart surgery. And they would go in from the left side and open the rib cage and go in and fix the valve in the left atrium of the heart, because there was some bad DNA down in southern India, and lots of kids were born with this problem. So they had a big hospital there, and this ward always had 75 or 80 kids in it, and I was in charge of it, and it was my job to get them off of ventilators, because they would come out of surgery and be on a ventilator because the rib cage had been opened on one side, and they're having a problem breathing anyway. And plus they had low energy because the left atrium was leaking all the time. And so these kids always wanted to sleep. And afterwards, it was full of energy and wanted to do things. So it was my job to get them off the ventilator and get them back up on their feet and walking again. And so that's how come I spent so long there. I went there for a 90-day program, but when I saw what was going on and how much need was there for this ability to help these kids breathe again, I just ended up staying for 12 years. I didn't go anywhere, except for occasional walks in the Himalayas. I went to my teacher in South India said I could go to North India to visit this guru who would teach you how to get out of your body. The time that they closed the hospital down for 30 days, just kept the minimum amount of wards going, and everybody would take a vacation. So I went, I got on a third class train, and, which was a wooden seat in a boxcar with straw on the floor. And there was a guy there, a lawyer named Lewis, who was following me everywhere, because he was in the interview room with me, saw me one day. And don't ask me why, I don't know to this day why, but Lewis was looking at Swami, trying to get his attention. So Swami finally looked at him and he said, "What do you want?" And Lewis says, "I want to know, is John Davis going to receive realization in this life?" I'm sitting there going like, what the fuck's it to you? You know, why are you asking him that? And he looked at Lewis, then he looked at me, he looked at Lewis, and he looked back at me. Then he looked at Lewis and he said, "Yes." And so from that day, Lewis followed me around like a shadow. It didn't matter where I went, he was there, because he thought that if he was present when I got realization, that he could also ask for a favor from God and get some form of realization himself. And so I was trying to get rid of Lewis, so I took third class boxcar to northern India. He flew there in a jet, and he was waiting when I got off the train in Chandragath, which is in the foothills of the Himalayas, which is where the guru was who could teach you how to get out of your body. And he wanted me to go to this Royal Hilton hotel with him, and that he would pay for my room and food and all that. And I was like, no, Louis, I didn't come here to sit in a fancy hotel. I came because this guy's going to teach me something about understanding about the body. And that's what I'm here for. So you go ahead and go to the expensive hotel. And I had the little taxi guy, three-wheeler, take me to a wooden, cheap-ass Indian hotel that was 3 stories tall, that every time you took a step in it, the whole building went, you know. But it was only 40 rupees a night for a room on the top floor. And I'm sure Louis was paying 4,000 or 5,000 rupees for the air-conditioned rooms that they were staying in. And so I refused to go there with him. So finally around midnight or so, they left. It was probably 11 o'clock. They went back to the fancy hotel to have a meal. And while I was sitting there, I was ready to go to bed. I was tired and sleepy. 3 days riding in a boxcar will definitely blow a lot of energy resources out of your ass. Although the locals I rode on the boxcar with, for the first day, they were looking at me like, what are you doing here? Then the next 4 days, it was like, we were all like brothers, you know, it was all, I mean, I sang bhajans with them. We were having a great time. When the kids would come through with the drinks, cold drinks, I would buy one for everybody because the drink was 5 rupees and there's maybe 15 people in the boxcar, so it was no big deal. I'd buy everybody a soda every day in the middle of the day when it was hot. So anyway, around 12 or 12:30, I heard a knock on the door. And I thought, oh shit, I hope that's not Louis again. So I went and I opened the door, and here was a little old Indian guy standing there with a tray with tea and milk and sugar, and Indian tea, chai. And he said, I brought your chai. And I said, well, I don't remember ordering any at midnight, but I guess, okay, you can bring it in. So he brought it in and he set it down. And then he sat down and he poured 2 glasses of tea. And I'm like, what can I do for you, my friend? I don't mind visits, but it's kind of late. And he said, you came here to see me only, isn't it? And I'm like, I don't know. Who are you? He said, didn't your teacher send you here? I said, well, yeah, he did. He said, yeah, that's what I thought. You came to understand how to transfer or how to transition out of your body so that you could move around without a body. And I was like, that I heard this, and I'm very interested in learning about it. It's just a little late. He says, no, it's not late. And he reached out and he popped me on the forehead with his finger. Just gave me a little pop, and I was out of my body. I was somewhere in a dark place with lots of colors and lots of sounds. I had no idea what was going on. And, it was cold, and pretty soon I heard him call my name. He said, John Davis. And I zip, bang, I was back in my body again, looking at him. And he handed me a cup of hot tea, and he says, here, have a tea, and we'll talk a while before you try again. And I didn't make any agreements about trying again, but I was like, okay, I'm open for this. I drank about half a cup. The Indian teacups are humongous that he had. So he reaches out, he says, let's try again. And he, without any warning, taps me on the forehead again with that finger. And this time I was up over top of the hotel, floating I was just hanging in midair there. And I know it was the hotel because I could look down and see it in the little courtyard below. And I could see the city Chandragoth in the hills as I went off to the left and right in front of me. And I was wondering how I got there and what was going on. And I know the little guy had told me and I was there, but I didn't understand how. that happened. Then I heard him call my name again, and like instantly, I was back in my body, sitting on the couch in that room, trembling. I was shaking like a leaf because I was cold. And he handed me a hot cup of tea again. I don't know where he kept getting the hot tea from, but he handed me that and he says, "Here, drink this. And we'll sit a while." So I was okay. I'm okay with that. And we were talking about small talk. And he said, "Here, let me put more tea in your cup." He took the cup from me, and with his other hand, he reached out and thumped me on the forehead again. And bang, I was out of my body again, floating over the hotel again. And I heard music behind me, and my body just turned in the air, and the music was coming from the hill up behind us, behind where the hotel was. It was quite steep because Chandragoth is the foothills of the Himalayas. And I heard this music, and my body I just started flying towards it. I couldn't stop. And I went up the hill quite a ways, and around the corner of this big rock on this hill, and there was a city there, and the city looked like it was made of ceramic buildings that all glowed. It cast sort of a light. And I was up a little high, and then people started looking at me while I was there, and they waved to me to come down. So I went down as close as I could, which was about 10 feet off the ground. I couldn't even get any closer than that. And they said, "It's so good to see you. You'll be back. We'll see you again soon." And about that time, I heard the guy call my voice, and boom, I was back in the room with him. So then he said, "Okay," he said, "that concludes your lesson." He goes, "You know how to get out now, and you can go anywhere." And I thought in a moment. And so I'm going to go back to my ashram and deal with my students. And he says, "It was very nice meeting you. And I'll see you again sometime. Maybe in this life, maybe not." And he left. This is maybe 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I was kind of wired up from all the tea, because tea there is pretty potent. And I suddenly heard all these footsteps on the stairs outside, because this building did not have an elevator. It was 3 flights of stairs. I heard all these feet thumping on the stairs, and pretty soon the door, they opened it up, and there's Lewis. And he's like, "Let's go look for this guy. I got a cab hired." And I said, "Lewis, my business is done here, and so I'm going to take off. You guys go ahead and look for him yourself." He looked on the table and saw 2 teacups there, and he immediately put it together, and he said, "He's already been here, hasn't he?" I said, "Well, yeah, he has, but that doesn't mean you can't go looking for him too." So I took off, but that was an illuminating experience. Quite an experience, even in kind of a blessing, I guess, in a way, because I don't know how it happened, but it happened. It was clear that it was meant to happen. So I haven't told that story to too many people, mostly because people find it incredulous and won't believe it. But I don't really give a shit, because I lived it, and it'll always be in me. I can't transfer it to anybody. I can only mention that this happened, that it's a possibility. And if people take that as a seed inside themselves, maybe someday they'll find themselves standing on that same mountain, looking for the same answers I was looking for. So probably about it. Is there anything else?
Oh man, we love the stories around here, Indra, that's for sure. We've had comments all night long. What a great guest, as always. Every time that you're on, people enjoy your stories, your life experience.
Can you
It's so easy to
take
sit
your
back and listen
headset
to
off?
you.
It got much clearer. It's hard to hear. It's echoey when you've got the headset on.
Everybody's been saying in chat that we love your stories. I love your stories. It's so easy to sit back and just listen to your life experience. It's always a great night, great episode when you come on.
Well, life is a wonderful thing. If you live it and not let anybody else really tell you how to live it, but follow your heart and live it that way. Live it through your own beingness, and it'll impart wisdom to you and make you understand things that other people do. First, it teaches you to understand yourself. Yeah. You can't really understand anybody else until you understand yourself. That's just the way things are. So the best thing you can do is get on the path of understanding yourself, and that'll take all the confusion out of your life because you'll understand everybody else that you run into. So I would recommend that as a path. I followed it to be illuminating. I know I see a lot of other people get in fights with people and do vengeance and all sorts of things. But if you follow the path of the heart, none of that will happen, and you'll only attract others who are on the path. I can remember when I started following Yogi Bhajan years and years ago, back in the early 80s. I was sitting in one of the talks that he was giving, and I sort of went off into myself, and I found myself sitting on an animal skin in this valley with this huge mountain before me, and up the mountain were thousands and thousands of different trails. You could see people walking on all these different trails, and at the top of the mountain there was a few thousand arms that were reaching up in heaven and taking gifts down and giving them to people that were on these paths when they got to the top of the mountain. And then Yogi Bhajan asked me a question and brought me out of that reverie. But I never forgot that, because I always thought that's the truth. That's what's going on. There's thousands of different paths to understanding. It's that way so that everybody, in all the difference that we are from each other, can still all achieve the same answers, because we're all climbing the same mountain. It's just that you might be a different rocky path or a different smooth path than the rest of the people. And I really kept that experience inside myself. And occasionally I have that dream again. So, not afraid of death anymore. It'll come. And when it does, I'll greet it and carry on from there. When Steve Jobs was dying in the hospital, his family went in to see him at the end. And right at the end, he suddenly sat up in the bed and he looked over everybody's shoulder behind him. And he said, "Wow, wow, wow." Then he lay back and died. So what do you think he was saying wow about? Anyway, it's just a question that begs an answer in your own heart. You don't have to try to verbalize it, because there's no real answer, except for that you could understand that he was given some vision at the end. And he was able to speak about it. I mean, all he said was "wow" 3 times in a row. But his sister, who tells that story, said that his eyes were wide open and he looked like he was happily seeing something. So whatever, as he was leaving the body, he came to understand there is no death. We are eternal beings, each one of us. And we come to this heavy place, this dense place called Earth, so that we can fulfill understanding about emotions and feelings and love. And that's what this school is for here. So you don't really die, you just graduate. So I lost my fear of death a long time ago. I've been there a couple of times, knocking on the door, and I'm still here. So it wasn't time. All in good time. All in good time.
The Billy Urban
She
chat
never
would like to
love
know
her.
if you. It's very important.
You got that headphone on again?
No, I
can't hear you
actually
when you got that
switched
headphone.
mics. No, actually, I switched mics completely.
Oh, that
Hillbilly Urban.
there sounds better.
Hillbilly Urban chat would like to know if there's a way to consume peyote without purging.
Without purging. Well, peyote, it's said that the purging is to clean out stuff that's keeping you from feeling the real high that peyote has to offer. Now, I've had plain mescaline, chemically made mescaline, and still your body wants to purge a little bit. Remember one thing that mescaline is, it's also a toxin, or considered a toxin anyway. But some of the best highs on the planet are toxins. So you can extract the mescaline out of the peyote button. And if you extract it out and then let it crystallize out, then you have a chance to also clean it a bit using solvents and a little bit of either hydrochloric or sulfuric acid, and make it go to needles. And then it won't be the big horrible purge like if you eat a couple of fresh buttons where you have to barf and barf and barf. But yeah. Anyway, I think it's worth it. And even if you do barf for a while, you stop barfing after a while and you start going inward. A lot of the barfing is you holding on to negative stuff. And the mescaline enters your body and it's like, nah, we can't get high with that crap there. Get rid of it. So that's what I have to say about that. Did that help?
I hope it helped. It wasn't my question, but I hope it helped. He says yes. Thanks for listening. I believe it helped. So what are so special about the Philosopher's Stone to you versus some of the other mushrooms?
Say again.
For me, it's
say that again.
Yeah. Why are the Philosopher's Stones more particular to you than any of the other shrooms?
Well, I was in Amsterdam getting visas to go back to India when the smart shops were opening up in the 80s. And I bought, I don't know, a couple of kilos of Philosopher's Stones. Well, I bought a couple of ounces of them in Amsterdam, and I munched on them all day long while I walked around the city. I never had such a big shit-eating grin on my face. I was happy. I was saying hello to everybody. I spent hours and hours stoned as one could be. Then I went to dispensaries, the Damp Kring, which is a famous head shop there. And I went there and smoked, a couple ounces of good weed. And so I really liked the philosopher's stones. For one, for two, you don't barf on philosopher's stones. The toxic part of psilocybin appears in the fruit above ground, and the philosopher's stones, it's mostly already psilocin, and so it doesn't have to go through your liver and cause you to feel nauseous. So it's very clean, sweet, instant high. I probably ate 2 ounces of them that day, and I could see that there was no deleterious effect from having a bunch of it. So I took a bunch of it back to India with me, and I found the Indian guy who was growing mushrooms for restaurants. I said, "Here, grow me some of these." So he did. And we got philosopher's stone. Philosopher's stones, when you drag them out of the jar and separate them, all the rest of the stuff off of them, you then take that other stuff that's left over and case it on a dish or something. Then you get the Mexicana A, little tiny mushrooms grow up out of the leftovers. So you get a double yield when you grow them. You get the philosopher's stone, and then you get the liberty caps afterwards. Both of them, which are stony as can be. I appreciated them always. I'm 76, and I'll sit down and eat a bunch of them with you at any moment. Wonderful stuff. The other thing that's really good are these here.
I may be a little ahead of you on that tonight, Indra. So have you ever mixed them and have you ever made a psilocybin extract?
All the time. You just, all you have to do is grind up the mushrooms and cover them with the ethanol. I like 200 proof, but you can cover them in 160 or 170 or whatever. Leave it in there for a few days, shake it up, pour it out, pour more in. Do that 2-3 times in a row till you're pretty sure you've got it all out. Then you just want to add a tiny amount of hydrochloric acid to your solution in acetone, and it'll crystallize out as needles. And you can decide what kind of a dose that you're heroic enough to take. Enjoy psilocin. It'll be straight psilocin, so your body doesn't have to go through any hoops to get stoned. The minute you put those needles in your mouth, like 30 seconds, you're getting off. You're high right then. It's a bit like smoking DMT. It's really instantaneous. So yeah, mushrooms. All mushrooms can be extracted that way. Every single one of them.
Can you leave it in
nothing
the
different.
tincture form?
See what?
I said, can you leave it in the tincture form?
Once you change it into needles, you can put it in a jar and seal it up and keep it for years. You can even get yourself a tiny amount of nitrogen and put it in the jar with it. Make sure it's fully expanded so it doesn't blow the jar open when it gets warmer. And, you can keep the psilocin will stay fresh in nitrogen atmosphere for, I don't know, a couple hundred years anyway, longer than you'll live. It doesn't degrade like if you keep mushrooms for 2 years, pretty soon you're not getting so high off them anymore. But if you change it into psilocin, into needles, 5 years later, it's still just as stony as it was the first time. Highly recommend it.
What's your best ingestion method with the mushrooms and the fungi there? Chocolates seem to be
Say again.
a good way. I said, how is your best ingestion? What's your favorite ingestion method with the mushrooms? I recently had some chocolate truffles that were good, and man, did they hit quickly. I believe because of the chocolate.
Yeah, I have a bunch of that kind of stuff. I have people give me those all the time. I got a whole little thing here. These are all truffles and chocolate mushrooms. And let's see, some of them are also have they also have the harmony included in it, and it really makes you feel the mushroom powder really amazingly strong. So yeah, I get that stuff. People send me that kind of stuff. You can only take so much of that. Send me buds instead. I need better ripping. One thing I've learned over the years is I like all the other stuff. I like concentrates. God, I invented concentrates, but I really still love flowers. I'm a flower freak. Nothing better than crunching up a bud or putting it in the roller, dragging it out, taking the first few puffs off of it, feeling that comes over you. Should be pretty potent this time when I get some because I haven't smoked for a month. So it should knock me right on my keister, which is my favorite way to get knocked on. Somebody out there in the land will take pity on me and send me some flowers, whatever, anything.
What is that address again? That GoFundMe address, Indra?
That was Post Office Box 309, Orleans, Orleans, California, 95556, and my name, John Davis. But let me say this about that. If anybody's going to send me any, please package them properly so that they won't come to the notice of the delivery people by smell. So seal them up in several baggies deep. And then I will, next time I come back on the show, I will grade all the ones that came to me and make comment on them. But I never had a bad bud yet, so it won't be terrible. So could you understand the address that time?
Yes, sir. They put it in chat.
Say
Going
again?
through chat right now. They've posted it up in chat for me in chat. He wants me to confirm that though. It was P.O. Box 308, Orleans, CA 95556. John Indra.
Yeah, but it was 309, not 308.
Okay, 309. Thank you for confirming.
Don't send any to box 308 because 308 is the Christian Children's School. So anyway,
what did
ahead.
happen with the skating incident there, the skateboarders?
Say again now?
What happened with the skateboarders there? Wasn't that the first incident that happened earlier in this year? You talked about the tree hitting the house,
The
but you
skateboarders.
didn't really talk about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the,
you didn't really talk about the skateboard.
the skateboarders. I didn't put any effort into trying to find them because they were just skateboarding, and I'm sure they weren't out trying to find somebody to knock down. It just happened that way. So I let that go. And, they know who they are and they know what they did, and they're probably going to sleep over it. I won't. I'm done with it. I mean, you can still see the mark on my forehead where the fire hydrant hit me, and I'm still almost done with the two black eyes ahead. Two really black eyes. I mean, I looked like I had a Batman mask on for probably a month there. And, the VA, I mean, those guys, every time I go there, there's something terrible going on. They wanted to give me a checkup to find out if there was bleeding in the brain. I said, okay, you can check it, but I'm not. Because if I would have been, by now I would have been going, blah, 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 and I'm not. So I'm probably okay. And they checked it and they said, well, no, you weren't bleeding in the brain. But the latest check, they said my neck is broken or fractured. 3 of the vertebrae are fractured from the tree hitting me. They're not broken, they're just fractured, you know, they hurt. Really, really fucking hurt. But it won't do me any good to complain about it because no one is going to listen or give a shit about that. So I just swallow it. Bitter pill to swallow, but so is life. And in the end, you die. You know, that happens sooner or later to everybody. No big deal. I watched all the people in my family die. I'm still here. My great grandpa and great grandma lived. She lived to be 116, and he lived to be 111. So, the dad's side of the family, they all lived to Methuselah's age. You know, I was always afraid as a kid. Does that mean I'm gonna have to live to be 100? I don't know, but gee whiz, I'm 76, and it doesn't look like I'm going anywhere yet. So I might actually have to end up. I hope it's easier to find stash when I'm 90 than it is now. But let's see. Life is what it is. Life is what it is. I'm an upstream swimmer. A lot of people go with the flow, but me, I swim upstream. I find out there's a lot more to be gotten out of life if you're able to swim upstream. And everybody can do it. It's just you have to decide that you're going to do that. You're not going to listen to other people's advice. You're going to listen to your heart. The thing is, your heart's not going to lie to you. You know, other people will lie to you, but your heart's not going to lie to you. So keep that in mind when people are lying to you. Realize that they're expressing their own heart, and they don't know any other way to do it than to try to offload on you. It's what's going on in this world. I mean, there's only about 10,000 different ways to learn about love. And they're all here, they're all present. It's endless. The ways that God's thought of to teach the lesson. And that's why there's no, you don't really see anybody else around. I mean, I know they talk about UFOs, but the UFOs, that's another whole question, what those are about, who they are, what's going on there. Remains to be seen, but I guess sooner or later we'll find out. But other than that, I think that remember to keep busy on what's in front of you. Life's a bit like driving a car fast on the freeway. You don't want to be looking off to the left or the right too much. Driving on the freeway, you're going fast. So anyway, that's how I look at it. I try to keep my things that I need to do in order to understand myself in the forefront all the time. I know how things are going to end up, because when I was in India, I went to a place called Bhubaneswar, which is a place where it's changed now, but you have to walk up to it, and then you can drive up to it now. But when I went there, you had to walk 30 kilometers. And there's a temple there full of sadhus, holy people. They've got a big giant warehouse there that, I mean, literally it's like 500-600 feet long, 80 feet wide. And when you go inside of it, there's level after level after level of all of these palm leaves that this sage 5,000 years ago named anyway, he was alive 5,000 years ago during the beginning of the Kali Yuga, and I guess he didn't have anything to do. He wrote down the names, addresses, birth and death date, and the history of each person that would be born in the Kali Yuga, which is this age. And if you go there, these guys will look at your palm, measure it, take all your information. They'll go away for 3 or 4 or 5 days into the warehouses until they find all the palm leaves that mention you. They bring them out, read them all to you, tell you what all of them say about your life, about when you get, how long you're going to live, so forth and so on. And I went there, and I had a lot of questions, let me tell you. But they brought these leaves out, these palm leaves out that were in a box, dusty, pulled it out, started going through it, and then they found in Sanskrit my name. And they showed it to me, and it was all in Sanskrit, but my name and an address were kind of in written pidgin English, if there's such a thing. But it wasn't Sanskrit because you can't write John Davis in Sanskrit. So, but anyway, it was pretty interesting and spellbinding because they knew a lot of stuff. They told me that you were born and your grandparents had a house in Georgia, in Savannah, and that this house had 5 windows on the front, and the other houses had 4 windows. Well, I got in touch with my mom, and she said, well, you know what? Your grandmother and grandfather's house had 5 windows because all of the houses on that street, on Jones Street in Savannah, had 4 windows in them. But your grandmother liked to knit. And so Grandpa cut a window, an extra window in the room so the light would come in and she could sit by it and knit. So there was this 5th window that these guys were talking about in fucking India, out in the middle of no fucking where, on a palm leaf that they drug out of a warehouse. They had been there for 5,000 years. and they knew they knew a lot. They knew everything. Actually, they even told me, although at the time I didn't know. I asked them about Annie and my relationship, and they said she'll always have your respect, but she won't always be with you because something will change in her, and she'll go back to her roots. What changed? Yeah, her, the brain aneurysm changed her. Of course, I still respect her and I take care of her, but she lives in Maui and I live here. And I don't want to go to Hawaii. My mom and dad had a house and a condo in Hawaii for years. My dad bought one after the Korean War in the 50s. Him and mom bought a hotel in Waikiki on the beach. So I'd been there hundreds of times, and I get island fever pretty quick in Hawaii. I grew up in Okinawa, which is another island, in Japan, another island. And mom and dad had this hotel in Waikiki right down by the beach. And I used to go there until I got fed up with it, and then I'd leave. I mean, it's pretty small. Everybody knows everybody. It's not a place you want to spend your life at. At least I didn't. But Annie loves it there now. There's very little stress for her. She's living with her sisters, and her sisters don't stress her out very much. And she knows that that's her sisters, and so she feels comfortable. And nothing I can do about that except for accept it. Keep on keeping on. As Mr. Natural once said, very frequently comic books, Mr. Natural, he was always keep on keeping on, no matter what. So yeah, life changes. You go through a lot of shit. I've been here 76 years, and I've been around the sun 76 times now. Yeah. And there's some more to go, I guess, because I still haven't gotten everything done. But quite a bit. And I'll be glad to see the Scientific 710 building my system in Selma, because those guys are equipped to make it happen right. The jokers I was working with never were. It was all a big ripoff. People ripped me off for 3 systems, and then I had to pay for those 3 systems. And then 5 systems, which I had built in Missouri and shipped to the place where they were building systems, they decided they wanted to keep that. That was $500,000 worth of the chambers, and they just kept them and decided to start selling it without my permission or anything. And so, yeah, you think to yourself, well, can't you do something about that? Yeah, but you know what? The wheels of justice turn very, very slow. I will have those boys in court one day, and I'll have my day, collect some money from them. But in the meantime, until that happens, do what I got to do. I'm gonna maybe sometime. I've developed a new system to separate trichromes out of pot with no water, and instantly. I'm hoping to get to the point in time where I can share it with everybody, but I'm still dealing with a bunch of other shit that I have to deal with. I'm working on making a desktop extractor, and one really small one that just extracts 4 ounces at a time with no electricity and just a hand pump, the way it works. So hopefully that'll happen, and then people who don't want to go to the dispensary and pay big money for extract will be able to make one at home with maybe a $300 desktop hand-powered extractor. So a lot of things, just trying to do a lot of things, trying to leave a good mark on the world before I leave. Sometimes it's a little tough because there's a lot of greedy people. The greedy people always think that everything you do, they own. I've really did that for years. I mean, I got people trying to steal patents from me. They act like they're your buddy when you write the patent. Then they want you to put it in their name. I've heard that story so many times. We put it in my name for safekeeping. Well, kiss mine. Don't need anything safe kept in your name. I got some new patents that are coming out this year. They're dealing with terpenes and how to extract terpenes without using steam distillation. Steam distillation always, there's a big problem with it because when you steam distill, what happens is you get this terpenes that look like water, right? They're clear. What you don't understand is that when you steam distill like that, what happens is some of the very lightest lipids will go into solution with the terpenes. Terpenes are alcohols, by the way. So that's a solvent. And so these terpenes would absorb some of the fats and they would remain invisible in that clear stuff until you change the dilution rate. Like if you took that material and poured it in a glass of water, it would turn all cloudy. And the cloudy is the lipids coming out of solution from the terpenes that you put in there when you steam distill it and heated it up so that the terpenes could absorb and take those small lipids and hold them in suspension. So I'm going to teach how to extract terpenes that are fat-free and lipid-free, and you can put them in drinks. A lot of people, I'm talking to the people at Tequila now who tried for 3 years to put terpenes in tequila to make it taste like different kinds of pot, right? But every time they tried it would change this milky thing, and they didn't want that. They wanted it to remain invisible. So I developed this system to make them lipid free. So I'll put that on the wire this year. First, I got to make sure that the people at Tequila buy the main secret, and then after that, I'll let it turn into public information or a lesser version of it, anyway, shall we say. So anyway, I'm just trying to keep ahead of the game. I like making new things and understanding how all this stuff works. I've been looking at flowers and oil and hash for years, all the way since 1970, 1969 actually. I wanted to teach people how to make temple balls with no water. I know that Frenchie, who recently croaked, we had an ongoing argument for a long time. He used to tell me all the time, you don't share your tech with people. And I said, have you read the BHO thing? I shared that tech with people. And guess what? I didn't charge everybody who came to it $300 a head, like you do when you teach them how to make temple balls. Plus, he made them with water, and that's a entirely inferior method. I teach how to make temple balls that are soft as a baby's ass, burn residue free, and they're perfectly combined because I know how to combine the oil and the terpenes in such a way so that they are perfectly available. Soft cash. You can make a ball the size of a softball and squeeze it in half with your thumb and your forefinger. That's how soft they are. But they taste wonderful. They burn residue free, and it's all full of terpenes because no water. And I don't care what anybody says. When you make fucking bubble hash, you flush a lot of terpenes right down the fucking drain. I know it to be true. When I wanted to start making oil, I had to find a place to buy some raw material. And I found the bubble hash guys, and I was buying, say, 10 kilos of leaf after they washed the trichromes out of it. And then they would sell 10 kilos to me for $10. Then I would go and extract it, because even when you do bubble hash, there's still a 50% yield of oil remaining in the green stuff and the leaf and stuff. So I would buy that from them and extract it and then sell them back oil. I never told them where I was getting the oil from because I didn't want to raise the price on me on the 10 kilos for $10. So there you go. There's a little hint, using it, making it the way I will let out to the masses. Would be a good thing.
Is there a way we can reclaim the terpenes and the stuff we've lost in the water, in the bubble? Is there a way that we can reclaim the stuff that we've lost in the water through the bubble making process and add it back?
Yeah, don't do it. But anyway, you know for yourself for sure that after you get the water out, you smell it. It's full of terpenes. I mean, the water sucks terpenes in like there's nobody's business there. And so you can take the water and let's let it dry, and you'll end up with some terpenes on the dish there. But I have a much better method than that. Just don't use water in the first place, and you don't have to worry about a bunch of buds that are soaked wet that you need to throw away. You don't have to worry about polluting the environment with the water. None of that. It takes about 30 seconds to separate all the trichromes out with no water. That's a much superior method, believe me. CO2 is also not a good way, because CO2's got plenty of water in it, and it'll pull your terpenes out, put them in the water as well. CO2 is kind of a wet thing, and I'm not a believer in CO2. I don't think CO2 does anything good with pot. I mean, I know they use CO2 to extract with, but when you're done extracting with CO2, you get this big bucket of green shit, and then you have to put it in an alcohol extractor to extract the good shit out of the tar that you got from the CO2 extraction. Excuse me if I point out the fact that my system, it takes the very same stuff, puts it through once, and when it comes out at the bottom, it's ready to dab. None of this putting alcohol or reprocessing it again. Butane straightens it out, puts it out just the way you want to use it. So I'm always going to, and plus, I mean, I've had our extracts examined at laboratories all over the country. And you got to remember, I was working with the big perfume companies for 14 years. And with those guys, you dare not leave a footprint of solvent in their perfume oil. Otherwise, they would just cut you out, go to the next person in line. So for not hot labs, I'm talking about real labs that these perfume companies would use. Nuclear, magnetic resonance, you name it. They used the most potent ways possible. A 14-year run with them. We never had, in 14,000 extracts, we never failed once even for a footprint of solvent afterwards. So when it came to the marijuana, well, we already know exactly how to do it and leave no footprint. So people always tell me, oh yeah, it's solvent free. And I would go, well, here's mine, test it. And it would come back solvent free too. And I said, so there you have solventless. As long as there's no solvent, it is solventless. People are hung up on words and, instead of results. I'm more of a result guy than a BS guy. A lot of people out there will hand you all kinds of BS. I have a whole different hit for that. I don't say shit that I can't prove. Simple. I'm going to always tell you the right thing, irregardless.
There's a question in chat. What was your favorite cannabis strains? What are some of your favorite strains?
Well, I have to start way back when, Blue Dream. After that, my favorite became Chem Dog for some years. I just fell in love with Chem Dog. We were growing it left and right. We were growing buds that were so packed that they were crunchy, and we were knocking down 29 and 30% THC before other people started testing for potency. I mean, we had a lab ourselves, and so we just tested ourselves. But nowadays, I like OG Kush as a standby for me, as long as it's good, Platinum Kush or something like that. I like that Kush flavor. I'm kind of stuck on Kush flavor and haze. Those are the two flavors I love, Kush and haze. You can figure out the names that you want to call them. There's all kinds of ones. But as long as it's Kush and haze, I'm going to be a happy camper.
Where's been your favorite place to smoke hash? Been around the world. What are some of your favorite places to smoke hash?
Well, my porch is overlooking the Klamath River. And the porch that is partially demolished, but on my house, there's a wraparound porch that's 12, 13 feet wide, and it goes all the way. It's 60 feet long. It goes around the whole house. And I've got one of those Japanese vibrating, titillating chairs out there. And the porch is all screened in and no bugs. And I take Rosie out, my parrot, we go out, sit out there, and I let the chair give me a massage while I'm smoking. Not last month, but prior to that, and hopefully again, I will be doing that. So yeah, I just like, I can see the Klamath River I can hear it rushing along. And there's about 50,000 birds here. Of course, I've got big cherry trees, and during the cherry season, there's 1,000,000 birds come because they're after that cherry, some of those cherries off the cherry tree. It's actually 4 cherry trees. One really small one makes those dark, sweet cherries. The other one makes the big red ones. But yeah, I like to sit out there because I can, not only I can see the river, but I've got 7 apple trees down there, all different varieties of apples, 5 or 6 different varieties of pears, a couple of peach trees, some pomegranates. Yeah. I love sitting out on the porch, smoking, and just looking at everything. I don't think Annie's ever going to come back to live here. So I guess this is my favorite place is home sweet home. I love smoking hash, believe me, but I haven't made any this last year. I want to make some next year, but I've got to find somebody that I can corroborate with who's going to have enough trichromes so that we can make some. I make 60% oil, 40% trichrome. That makes the kind simple balls. And if you've got like the farmers trichromes or some cheap trichromes that you can get your hands on, and you've got some oil, and you put the oil in a big stainless steel bowl, and you pour in enough liquid nitrogen to cover the oil with about 2 inches over the top of it. When you do that, the oil starts freezing down and fracturing and becoming smaller and smaller because liquid nitrogen is freezing it all into the smallest possible piece. So you let that happen, and you take a big steak or a 2x4 or a baseball bat, and you stir it up, and you keep stirring it and crunching it until there's no more crunching sound. The whole thing looks like a muddy river. It's just like a river full of mud. You can't see into it at all. So that's your oil. Then you take the trichromes that you got off the side and pour it into the liquid nitrogen oil mix and stir it up. Once you stir it up, you take it out, set it on the porch, and all the nitrogen will matriculate out of it in a few hours. And it'll be cold, but it'll be soft, and you can just grab a handful and roll it up into a temple ball, and there you go. How about that? What?
So I actually hope that you're still smoking bud when you're 90. I hope I get to smoke with you before you're 90, and I hope I get to smoke with you when you are 90, my friend.
Yeah, you'll still be a young part of 90. But I could live that long, who knows? After all, marijuana is a potent medicine. I've been smoking it since 1964, steadily until now. That's a long time. This is as low as my oil on my dipstick that I've checked has been in years. I've never been this low. Usually I pull the dipstick out and there's plenty of oil on it. But in the last month, there's been nothing. So the oil level in my crankcase is down. But everything changes all the time. I'm I depend on change. A lot of people hate it. Me, I look forward to it. I think change is the hottest thing since sunburn.
Change is inedible, isn't it?
Huh?
So change is inedible, isn't it? We're all gonna change at some point. Just we can't stop it. We can't stop
No,
change. We have to embrace it.
that sounds like you're dreaming up the words to that song. I can't remember that. Down, 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 down. Change is inevitable. So one should learn to embrace it, right? I mean, if it's happening all the time and you're fighting it, you're cross purposes against your own existence. So I would recommend.
Really, yeah, you
that
kind
you
of
don't
touched on about the fear of dying too. It's the same thing as change. I've really found that you can't really start enjoying life until you stop fearing death. Then that's the point when you can really start to enjoy life. In my point of view. Same thing with change. Once you embrace it, it isn't such a bad thing.
Fear is the biggest destroyer of self-awareness that exists on the planet. Stop being afraid of shit. There's nothing here to be afraid of except for situations that you might end up putting yourself in. And even those are probably learning situations for you. So don't be afraid of change. Change is like, it's a wonderful thing. Except is realize that. Then a lot of people like talk about karma. They have a bunch of bad sayings like, yeah, karma is a bitch. But I learned a different way of looking at karma. Karma is the sweetest lover on the planet, and she gives you back exactly what you give out. And so if you give out some shit, you're probably going to be saying karma's a bitch. But if you turn that around and put out what you would like to have back, karma suddenly changes into a wonderful situation. People are always saying bad shit happens because of karma. I got news for you. Good shit happens because of karma too. And it's decidedly more often, unless you're stuck on the karma's bad scenario, which is kind of dumb, but hey, a lot of people get caught up in it. Look at the gangs. They go in prison, they put tattoos of skulls on their neck and their face. They talk shit. But after jail softens them up after 10 or 15 years or so, then you want to start talking about Jesus. You could have saved yourself a lot of trouble in the beginning by not being an asshole. People don't seem to get that though. Prisons are full of people who misunderstood that entire dynamic, isn't it?
Karma isn't always something that you can fix in this lifetime. You might not even reap the come around until your next lifetime.
I recommend against waiting for your next life. You're here in this life, and it's kind of ridiculous to think about. Well, what was I doing? Well, you was doing lots of shit, but now you're here doing this. So best to get on to that one rather than constantly trying to figure out how you got to certain situations. Well, dude, it's getting late for this old fart. So I'm gonna bag off here because it's 12:17, and that's 2.5 hours behind my normal bedtime.
Well, I greatly appreciate your time, Mr. Indra. The stories you tell. You know, I like to think that you are leaving somewhat of a small legacy, bio here on the channel of Indra. And I'm glad you take time to come on, tell your stories, and let us in on your journey throughout your life, because it has been an incredible journey. You may not think you've left your mark.
Yeah.
In my eyes and many of people, you've left a hell of a mark so far.
Well, the reason I share the stories is because in hopes that some people will hear a message there that will make them change where they're at and start looking for a different paradigm. Because a lot of people are stuck in the situation they don't really want to be in. I understand that. And to me, it's always why I talk publicly. When I was in India, Swami used to tell me that this was years ago in the 80s. He used to tell me, well, before you pass out of this life, he said, a lot of people will want to ask you questions and hear your understanding and your experiences that you learned while you were here. So not everybody from your country can come here and have these experiences, but you've gotten that blessing and you're here. And so, well, that was years and years ago. And now I do speak publicly because people do enjoy listening to the depth of the experience, not who I am, but what the experience was about. So there you have it. That's why I do it. And I'll be glad to do it again in the future. This summer, I'm going to put my 99 plant exemption to work. And I've got like 20 cords of black oak firewood. But who the hell's going to take a long drive to load up a bunch of heavy oak? But anyway, got some. I don't use firewood myself because I got a 500-gallon gas tank sitting outside the cabin. It lasts me for 1.5 years at a time. And I don't have to chop any wood or carry any in or go outside when it's winter and get wood to carry in. Instead, I'm sitting in here turning the thermostat up going, yeah, I'm warm. And Rosie loves the heater. She's got I have a mini electric heater in her cage, which she sleeps by every night. She wants to snuggle up to that thing and keep warm. I'm all for making her happy any way I can. I just love my little birdie. She is smart as a whip. She's training me, actually. I thought I was training her, but what turns out that she trains me the way she wants to do things and what she wants to. If she wants fresh water, she'll go stand on her water bowl and squawk. So I give her fresh water in the water bowl. She shuts up. If she wants some different food or more food, she'll stand on the food bowl and squawk. And I'll say, okay, you want food? She'll say yes. And I'll give her food. Then I'll ask her, you want fruit? She'll say yes. And I give her fruit and I give her vegetables. Heat up grits and oatmeal and fresh frozen vegetables, one of her favorites. She digs into that by the hour. I just enjoy making her happy. I don't really care much about anything. I don't go four-wheel driving, even though I've got the baddest four-wheel drive there is. I don't because I just haven't been physically well enough. The tree hasn't helped anything. Whacked me. By the way, if anybody's interested, I have a bunch of world-class opals and world-class opal jewelry for sale. Make myself. See, well, it's a world-class opal, 22 karat gold, all handmade. Another one. The opals are finest opals. This is a crappy light we're under here.
Is some of the artwork still available that you've been working on?
Oh yeah, my artwork is always available. I make prints, big ones even, much as you the size you like. I sell. There's a couple of online print stores where they buy copies of my art and they make it into sheets for printing LSD on. Who would have thunk it, right? Back when we used to make really cheap copies of paper or make window pane. You don't hear about that anymore, but window pane was a great acid. You made it with a gel. But yeah. Everything goes around, comes around. So maybe window pane will show up again. Maybe somebody will start making good LSD again now that psychedelics are coming back online. I appreciate good psychedelics, believe me. Nothing I like better to sit in that state, see the colors and the geometric shapes, and also, depending on what you're taking, receive wisdom. Like 5-MeO-DMT, you just literally go right out into the universe. You just leave here. You're gone for 5 minutes, and then the universe delivers you back again, but full of incredible knowledge about you. And what else is there to learn about on Earth except you? Try to remember that. You're the most important thing in your life is you. So try to understand you, because you're connected with everybody else's you. And if you get to the point where you can understand you, you'll start appreciating everybody else's talents, attractions, whatever. Everybody's on a path towards learning. You know, you have to be kind to people because they're trying to find out who they are. So you should be kind to them and help them on that path to finding out who they are. Because they may be a wonderful person that you'll be so happy that you met. I've met the most incredible people that appeared on this earth so far. I've met bunches of them. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't trade any of it. I mean, walking in the cold in India at 10,000 feet for a place to sleep for the night. It was a real bitch then, but you know what? It was a real learning experience and brought a lot of understanding. I'm not sure you can even dispense that kind of understanding, but maybe that's why I do these talks. So anytime you want to hear some more of this stuff, I know the local school had a sign up that said, "We're hiring teachers." And my friend who works for one of the tribes, he said, "Hey, you've got a really rich life. Have you thought about maybe being a teacher?" I said, "Yeah, but probably the first day is going to ruin everything." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, if I go in there with a bunch of kids and they want to learn, first words out of my mouth are going to be, 'Kids, everything you've heard up till now is bullshit.'" So my buddy was like, "Maybe that's what's needed." I said, "I'm sure it is, but I'm not going to do that job in this life." So anyway, there you are. I hope I haven't bored you too much. Hope I haven't talked anybody's ear off. Love everybody. I hope all you guys achieve ultimate realization of who you are. I mean, the thought is important. Everything's important, but nothing is important as who are you? That's important. So find out. So that's my word wisdom for the night. I'm going to sign off and hit the rack and poop. Rosie went to bed about 4 hours, 5 hours ago.
I appreciate the advice. Kind of felt like I was almost meant.
Well, I appreciate everyone listening. And my final word is, don't do anything that I would do. And if you do, could you please name it after me? So, Eagle, it was enjoyable. I appreciate taking the time to listen to what this old fart has to say. I wish everybody a pleasant evening. And live your best day tomorrow and every day. Don't let anybody keep you from living your best day, please. You can tell them you heard it from me. I'll take responsibility for it. All right, guys. Good night. And I will talk to you again sometime.
Hopefully soon.
There's my buddy.
Hopefully soon.
So, fucking talking with Eagle. Gonna check out now. Love everybody. Take care.
We love you,
Night.
John. Thank you. Man, it's a hard act to follow right there, Mr. John Indra. Always one of my favorite episodes. Very, very much requested. I hope you have enjoyed this episode tonight. I always kind of just sit back and let Mr. Indra do his thing. If you were honestly just sit here and see me, you're pretty much like a kid. The links are in the chat below, or in the description of the show, how you can help and donate to Indra. Everybody has hard times. I think we will that night after night. Random acts of kindness to save lives. At some point, we all need it. So in this case. With that being said, I hope you guys have enjoyed episode 472. Maybe not on the wormhole. Let me stretch my legs and we'll see. If you guys want a wormhole, put your votes in chat. With that being said, thank you to everybody that participates in this crazy journey of mine. But I love you guys. Random acts of kindness do save lives. Please try to do something nice for somebody. I'll see you guys in a few.